Allhallows is a venue on the Thames that I've not fished before, but it's one that I see on almost a daily basis. It's on the Kent side of the estuary, directly opposite where I live. On my first attempt to fish there, I couldn't see past the end of my road, since on this occasion, this part of the lower Thames was blanketed in thick fog. When I eventually arrived at the seawall, I set up to fish for flounders, and my bait consists of ragworm, left over from a session on the south coast, and black lug. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to dig my own bait, so I had to make do with this. The first mark I decided to fish is near the points along the coastal path to the east of the holiday park. I could only just see into the water, but not as far as I could be casting. I've set up a Sheppey rig attached to a Takana bomb and a 3-hook clip-down rig attached to a breakaway flat lead. The tide is already coming in, but not having fished here before, I wasn't sure how far up the seawall it would go, so I've perched myself pretty much on the top. With hindsight, that was a bit of a mistake. I could have set up much lower down and just perhaps go up the wall for casting, but I tend to do things the wrong way round and make life more difficult for myself. It's pretty shallow here, so when the tide is quite low, you need to make sure that your lead is not getting stuck in the mud, just like at grain. So immediately after casting, it pays to give it a few tugs to ensure your lead is not stuck. Otherwise, if you get a bite and the fish is on, you have to pull the lead out of the mud, and quite often that results in a lost fish. Since the tide is coming in up the estuary, the water movement's from right to left, so I've cast out the lighter rig first, and that's followed by the one with the heavier lead. I'm casting that one further away to ensure lines don't get tangled, and although the sun is trying to break through the fog, I can't see where the lead is landing. As you can see, it is a bit awkward perched up here, and I do now wish that I'd set up closer to where the rocks are, at the base of the seawall. Promising sign though, little knocks on my tips straight away. I strike into that one, and I think there's a fish on. Doesn't feel very big though. A little schoolie on ragworm on the top snood gets me off the mark. Just in case it's the only one, I've brought the fish up to photograph it, but it goes back safely. My baits have been well chewed, so need to be replaced. As I'm clipping up my successful rig for recasting, I'll run through the locational details. The regional setting first, with some venues on the north side and some on the dark side. Homing in on Hythe Peninsula, on a bright day you can see some of the marks on Canvey and Southend from the Kent side, including Southend's Pier. You could check out my playlist for those I've already covered. The River Medway separates the Hythe Peninsula from Sheppey, and the Isle of Grain is now part of the peninsula. Allhallows being the most accessible venue on the Hythe Peninsula. The mouth of Yanlet Creek separates the area from the Isle of Grain and can also be fished, but it's quite a long walk. It's a holiday park where most of the fishing is, but access to it has been a problem during the lockdowns. But there's public access from near the British Pilot Pub, which is where you need to park. I've identified the 2 locations I've fished for this video. Dragging my baits gets a response, and I feel a fairly decent fish on. This is why I should have set up a bit lower down, since it's quite awkward playing it as I'm moving my way down the seawall. And then you've got to negotiate the rocks, which have got quite slippery weed on them. The fish has kited to my right. Well, I thought that was going to be a lot bigger, but it is foul hooked in the base of the fin. It was probably a bit shocked, but after careful unhooking, no harm came to the fish. It swam off quite nicely. It's probably sizable, but wasn't going to measure it, and in any case I put most of my fish back. However, if it hadn't have swum off, it could have ended up on my dinner plate. The sun's doing its best, but it can't break through that fog, and it's turned decidedly chilly. some unknown reason, most of our bites have come to the clip down rig, with not much happening on the Sheppy rig. At least I'm getting bites, and I've connected into this one as well. Although I can't see any river traffic, you can hear its presence. I couldn't swing this fish as my legs got stuck in the rocks, but I'm happy to report it's a flounder rather than scaldy bass. So that's another mission accomplished. I just need to catch a few more, and or a bigger one. Sharp bite on the Sheppy rig, but I missed that. Then another good knock on the clip down rig. That felt like a good fish, but unfortunately it swam in close and got snagged up on the rocks. Unfortunately, my line parts. I fish on with just the one rod, having swapped my Sheppy rig over to a clip down version, and I'm still getting plenty of knocks. I fished on, had another flounder and a couple more schoolies, but unfortunately everything was getting wet as the fog thickened and I had to put the cameras away. I would have liked to have fished the tide right down, but I had to leave because I was getting a little bit concerned. I couldn't see the path that I'd walked along. Still, it was one of my better sessions of late, and I've seen the potential of bass fishing here. A few days later and the weather was a lot better and I was keen to have another go, this time fishing from the holiday park itself. I got here a bit early, but at least gave me a chance to look over the ground itself, and I chose to fish by the concrete ramp in front of the activity range. Here there's a large gravel patch which juts out into the mud flats, so having got here when the tide is still out, I decided to set up just one rod and walk out as far as I can to see if I could catch something when the tide's on its way in. I've left the rest of my gear on the beach by that concrete ramp and will set up my second rod once I have to retreat all the way back to that beach. I'll be keeping my rod up quite high and I expect the water to rush in quite quickly. There is mud between the beach and this gravel bank, but it's not that soft, so I'm not likely to get stuck in it when I have to retreat back to the beach. This time though, I am wearing waders under my bib and brace, since I will be wading through the water, as it will fill in behind me. It won't be deep though, and I feel quite safe to be fishing here. Bait-wise this time, I've only got lugworm, which I dug myself at Southend. Last time, all of my fish was on the ragworm, with black lug not catching anything. So it will be interesting to see whether I catch or not this time. I've got the 3-hook clip-down rig that I used last time on this rod, and I'm baiting up with a larger lugworm. Clipping down is essential because I'll be casting as far as I can since the water will be very shallow. I'm a bit concerned that lead might get stuck, but as usual I'll feather it before it lands and I will tug to make sure it doesn't get lodged in the mud. I get a little tap, so I know there's something out there. Just need to check to make sure it's not crabs. Well, the bait's still okay, so I'm guessing that little knock was a fish rather than crabs, which is a good sign. I don't need to change the bait, just reclip and cast it back out again. The water's coming in quite quickly now, and it is filling in behind me. I'm not worried, because there aren't any deep gullies there. Obviously, fishing this way can be hazardous on certain venues, so you always need to be aware of the terrain and what's happening around you. I'm looking behind me, really just to see where I should be casting when I have to start fishing from the beach. I get another knock, so I still don't want to leave this gravel patch just yet. The water's right in now, and just as I was thinking about making a move, the tip goes again and I'm striking into something. It seems like it was worth waiting, and it justifies having moved onto this gravel patch to fish it when the water's on its way in. And it's a flounder rather than a scaldy bass, so it's a great start. I've now moved back to the beach, and it would normally be still far too early to be fishing from here. I wouldn't expect anything to happen until the tide is at least a further way up the groins, so I'm really pleased that I've had a flounder already. Until the water comes in a bit more, I'm only going to be fishing with this one rod, and at the moment I'll have to wade out a fair distance before casting, as it will be too shallow. At this stage I'll use up some of the broken bits of lugworm. Having watched the water come in when I was on that gravel bank, I know it's a bit deeper further to my right, so I'll be wading out and casting in that direction. I know I'll be casting onto mud, but I'm hoping it'll be towards the edge of that gravel bank. Still being very shallow, my lead's got stuck in the mud, so I have to yank it a bit more than usual to put it free. I should really have changed over to smaller lead until the tide's moved in a bit more. However, it will be deeper when I get round to doing my second cast. The tide's further in now, and I've set up my second rod and employed a sheppy rig on that one. For the time being, I'll be casting that one onto the gravel bank, pretty much where I was standing before. At least that's what I was hoping to do, because I know I'm not going to be able to get that sort of distance. The wind's also picked up and it's coming into my direction, so I know I haven't cast this that far, but at least it's on that gravel. With the breaking waves there, I'm expecting bass rather than flounders, but you never know. Later, I'll just be casting it onto the mud further to the right. I get a bite over the mud, but it doesn't develop. There's a bit of a breeze now, and it's a northeasterly, which it has been for quite a few days now. It's bringing in a little bit of weed, which is causing a few problems, so I'm going to have to raise my rods a little bit higher. Still, we're now at the point for tide that I'm expecting to get a bit more action. I've been using a small watch lead on the Sheppey rig, but now that tide's further in and the waves are a bit stronger, I'm going to swap over to an Americano. That should hold the bottom better and help with more distance casting in this wind. Top for tide now, and it is pretty chilly in that wind. I dragged the clip down rig, but then noticed a bite on the Sheppey rig. And much to my surprise, it feels that I've connected with that. Well, that's the result. Our second fish is another flounder. tide's now started to ebb, and I've had a few knocks on both rigs, but the only one I managed to hit is this one on the Sheppey rig. As expected, the culprit's a little squally. My fish had tied down a little bit more, but couldn't connect with any more of those knocks. Still, it was a pleasant enough day, and that's another must-fish venue ticked off my list. There's plenty of spots here that I still want to try. The other points on the coastal path closer to Yanlet Creek, and the area west of Yacht Club here at Allhallows Holiday Park. Since I now know that there's flounders to be caught, I just wonder whether on this occasion I might have been better off using ragworm, or maybe I would have just had more squally bass. Whichever the case, I'm just happy that I've had another 2 sessions on Thames Estuary, catching my target species, the flounder.